welcome back to PSA TV. This is the Wake Up Call. Joining me on the line right now, I have the political leader of the Progressive Party, and not PP as stated before, my correction. So I have the political leader of the Progressive Party, Mr. Nikoli Edwards. Good morning to you, Nikoli.
Good morning, Christy, and good morning to you, viewers and listeners.
How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thanks.
A long weekend?
Indeed, but a very productive one.
Yes, very much so. And I know you've recently been in Guyana, but before we head into your stay in Guyana, let me of course ask you briefly your thoughts on the budget.
Sure. Well, I consider the budget to be a checklist budget. This clearly is the government's attempt to appease as many sectors across society as possible. The thing is that the government did not have to necessarily wait for this budget in order to do a number of the things that it stated in the budget. For years, we've heard civil society and many quarters of society calling for certain things to be done for reinvigorating of the agriculture sector, for more or less looking at the minimum wage, for instance, and even gendered issues. So I think that this is the government's attempt, considering that we are in an election year, to more or less make itself palatable to all and sundry. But I do hope that the population will see through this, regardless of what it was, a very moderate budget, and I will give the government that. Thankfully, there was no extravagance, considering the circumstances that we're in, but at the same time, we could have gotten a lot more out of the budget in terms of a lot more meaningful things.
And when you say meaningful things, what exactly do you mean?
Right. So, for instance, youth development in this country continues to be a pressing issue. There has not been anything really in that budget that more or less paves the way for young people in this country. Yes, we would have seen an increase in OJT and an increase in the intake, but not every young person in this country will pass through OJT. So we need to see, for one, the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Council come to fruition after all these years of being defunct, and we need to resource that so that young people in this country have a proper voice. In terms of the VAT refund, there were a lot more questions and answers coming out of that scenario, where the Minister of Finance noted that coming into government, they met a $4 billion VAT refund to be paid out. He did not say how much that figure stands at today. He also mentioned that $3 billion worth of government bonds, interest-bearing bonds, would be made available to those who are being owed VAT. However, when we think about it, the taxpayers are the ones who are going to be carrying that interest on this $3 billion. So it's not necessarily a good thing for the average citizen. It may be somewhat of a good thing for those awaiting VAT, but better could have been done and a better strategy could have been in place.
And when you look at the increase in minimum wage from $15 to $70.50, I mean, to some people it may sound very good, but in actuality, what does it really signal to the status of our country?
Sure. What we should be focusing more on is driving prices down as opposed to increasing wages. I don't think anyone in this country should be paying minimum wage to employees, because I can't necessarily fathom what kind of job would negate $15 or even $17.50 per hour. I think that we're seeing that we have an illiterate population. People are seeking advancement and self enrichment insofar as looking for opportunities to better themselves so that in turn they can see about their family and so forth. But a greater focus should have been paid on driving the cost of goods and services down. And one way in order to do that is stimulating the agriculture sector. Now, it is my understanding, for instance, that there have always been certain tax concessions and so forth within the agriculture sector. When we look at the figures that was even given to agriculture this year versus last year, that figure has decreased. So how is it that the government is showing or trying to demonstrate that it is putting agriculture front and center when we have a national security budget and education budget that seems to be taking up the majority of the pie? Are we actually serious about feeding ourselves and becoming independent? And this government has clearly demonstrated that it is not, in fact, serious about that. And so, in its mind, $15 to 17.50 per hour may be that which appeals to the persons who are on the lower strata in terms of earners or the working class, but to the wider public, that absolutely makes no sense.
And even when you look at the introduction of several other things, as like for instance, making the agricultural sector tax-free, how many farmers are in fact registered? How will that benefit farmers?
That's a good question. So we require more information on that. The average farmer does not necessarily concern him or herself with the whole bureaucratic process of farming. So we need to make it easier and less stress-free, less hassle when it comes to farming, because many a persons are grown in the agriculture sector, coming down from their parents and their parents' parents, and so it's a thing that's a tradition that's passed down.
Yeah.
But we're seeing over the years where, yes, because persons are seeking out other opportunities through education and employment, that many people are not seeing the agriculture sector as being as lucrative as it once was, especially when persons have to compete with these foreign imports. So that's another issue that we must treat with. Of course, we should all be able to make choices. So if we have foreign goods on our shelves, we should also ensure that local goods get there as easily. So it's not necessarily about increasing the import taxes and so forth on foreign goods, but rather ensuring that the cost to produce in Trinidad and Tobago is much cheaper. And while removing taxes is one way of doing that, what about that individual who farms and goes to the market, does not necessarily go through the higher end production to ensure that it gets on a supermarket shelf or whatnot?
Yeah.
That may not be applicable to him or her.
Now, I've seen where you've said that you would not be contesting this year's local government elections, and you've said that you would definitely contest the general elections. Any particular reason why?
Sure. Let me first of all state that I've read some of the comments, and people are thinking that these smaller parties are simply shying away because they are afraid of losing and therefore losing the general election as well. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. If anyone in Trinidad and Tobago wishes to support the Progressive Party financially to ensure that we are able to contest the local government elections, and we would gladly do so. But the reality is that currently, for a party that launched only in June, while we have been making a lot of traction on the ground here in Trinidad and Tobago, the fact is that we don't have the resources to contest the local government elections. So it will be more prudent for us to set our sights and keep focus on general elections. And when you think about it as well, general elections, getting a seat in parliament, occupying the parliament, that gives you a greater chance of effecting real change in this country as opposed to at the local government level. Now, don't get me wrong, the job of local government councillors and aldermen are extremely, extremely important, but that clearly is at a more localized level. When we think about making laws, when we think about putting things in place to ensure we treat with the issues facing all of Trinidad and Tobago simultaneously, then the lower house and the upper house are the two areas in which you can really effect that kind of change. So that's why we are set on general elections. It gives us more time, an opportunity to attract the kind of resources we need, and to really ensure that we produce a strong party that people can get behind.
Now, one of the main concerns for the upcoming government, whether it's the PNM, UNC, PP, whoever it is, many people are looking out for job creation. And I'm not talking about just job allocation, but in fact,
Sure,
job creation. What
sure,
does the Progressive Party have up its sleeves when it comes down to job creation for
sure.
citizens?
Well, a progressive government understands that we need to ensure that our economy is a technologically based economy where we have prepared our citizens to treat with the technological advancements that is the world over. So, for instance, we have a strong human resource in this country. There are many opportunities for us to develop a technological sector where we are doing coding, for instance. And I know a lot of the times people can't connect the dots when we mention coding. But think about this, for instance. If we start teaching coding, and coding is a language in and of itself where you're able to build websites, you're able to build apps, you're able to have all of these user interfaces. If we start teaching that from as young as primary school, all right, you have young persons who are growing up and they would be able to get a job anywhere in the world, even just sitting right here in Trinidad and Tobago. Because I'm not sure many people understand, but sometimes when you're looking for someone to build a website, you go online. A lot of the time, it's Indian nationals based in India who are doing the job for you.
Yeah.
You never see them. You never have a face-to-face conversation with them, but you interact via email or whatever platform, and before you know it, you have a brand new website, and you're able to pay them and so forth. So we wanted to develop a system where there is, or a society where there is a strong emphasis on research and development as well. We have a number of universities here in Trinidad and Tobago, and many a time you have persons graduating and they don't have anywhere to really put their skills and their education to work in an effective and efficient manner. So those are some of the things that we would want to ensure that we're able to tackle, that we're able to deal with. Also, when you think about ensuring that we go the route of, let's say, cashless society, for instance, therein lies an opportunity for many persons as well to engage in a lot of these transactions where, for instance, you have persons who can work from home, who can provide many services. We want to also ensure that we have flexi time and work from home opportunities. Because when you think about the traffic situation heading into Port of Spain, because apparently the whole of San Fernando goes to Port of Spain
Yeah.
every morning to work.
Yeah.
And decentralizing is one thing, but we can also consider flexi time and work from home. Work from home is a situation where, for sure, the government will not need as much of square footage in order to conduct its business. So persons who have particular jobs can stay at home. They're provided with the access to certain things, and they can do that there. So you have people in the home. Think about a mother who is working and at the same time preparing lunch, or a father who can wake up on a morning and prepare breakfast for his children, take his children to school, and come back home and work right there and still be able to pick them up after school. These are the kind of things that Trinidad and Tobago, I think, is ready for and waiting, and deserves more than anything.
Very, very interesting indeed. And even when you look at, I see here, the government is plans to introduce a system for children under the age of 3 years from single mother households. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, for one, I think that it's a good move. The only issue, and I know this has been raised before, is that it should not just be limited to single mother households. What about single father households?
Yeah.
So while the government was trying to sound nice and trying to show that it empathizes with single mothers and gendered issues, I think that it was a misstepping. And I really think that the minister erred in his remarks. So it should be for any single parent household, especially to make those services available.
All right, Nikolai, in your continuation of your voter education, you've recently gone to Guyana. So,
Mhm.
how was that?
It was a really good experience. The Citizenship Initiative, which is the latest political party on the Guyanese scene, they were able to launch their party on Thursday, and I was invited as a guest speaker to come and share my experience here with the Progressive Party in Trinidad and Tobago, and more or less to lend support to the efforts of the Citizenship Initiative. And this is all part of the Progressive Party's regional push to ensure that we collaborate, that similar movements and parties with similar ideologies are able to work together. Because the reality is, should the Progressive Party form the next government, we need to have strong ties and linkages across the Caribbean. So we don't intend to go into this thing blindly. We are coming into it fully aware of some of the challenges being faced by our brothers and sisters across the region, but also some of the opportunities that are available for Trinbagonians here to take advantage of when it comes to across the Caribbean. So Guyana was this weekend here gone. But prior to that, I had visited St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, and many other Caribbean islands where I have met with the prime ministers of those countries. I have met with the young people, delivered remarks at various events, and this is a clear demonstration of how effective and efficient we, the Progressive Party, are when it comes to these regional linkages and ties. So, coming out of that opportunity in Guyana, I think that it brings closer ties between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, and to show that Trinbagonians were not just simply about capitalizing on the oil exploration in Guyana, but forming strong bonds and linkages to better both countries moving forward.
Yeah, and in terms of even going forward in the energy sector, you know, Trinidad and Guyana, we've had this a pretty good relationship, but
Mhm.
you know, Guyana seems to be outdoing all its counterparts, if I may say.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I would warn the Guyanese public about is to not make the same mistakes that Trinidad and Tobago made when we discovered oil. Because clearly, Trinidad and Tobago, this is our cash crop, the oil and gas sector, and
Yeah.
we have not done a good enough job diversifying our economy. So, government come, government go, we continue to put a strong emphasis on the oil and gas sector and neglect the other sectors in society. And it is to our detriment, especially considering that the experts are saying that we only have 14 or 15 years oil reserves in this country. Then what are our plans post the oil era? So Trinidad and Tobago has not been able to effectively diversify the economy because we've put all our eggs in one basket. And I warn the Guyanese people against making those same mistakes. I heard that President Granger in Guyana was mentioning that post Guyana, he believes it would look like an agro-processing economy. And I don't necessarily think that that's the right kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Post the oil boom, Guyana needs to as well consider technological services, financial sector reform to ensure that its people are able to treat with many of the issues that are current and that will come in the future. So we in the Caribbean, we're continuing to lag behind in many areas. And I think now with a political wave hitting the region, we need to see a change in regional leadership. We need to see a change in political ideology and how we manage the affairs of our various economies. So the older folks, and not to sound ageist, but the reality is the older folks have gotten us into this situation that we're currently in. While on one end, yes, we have advanced. The simple fact is that Trinidad and Tobago Guyana, many other countries, we could have all been much further than we are right now. Considering the billions of dollars that have passed through Trinidad and Tobago, we should have been much more developed as a country. And we have to blame the PNM. We have to blame the UNC. We have to blame all the former prime ministers who did not have the vision to take us far beyond where we are at right now. Yes, I will give Prime Minister Patrick Manning kudos for the work that he has done, but even that, it seemed limited to an extent because of the party structure and so forth. So Trinidad and Tobago, we have a decision to make in 2020, whether or not we want to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, or are we going to change things up, shake things up, give other people a chance to do good for this country? And I'm really hoping that the young people will come out in their numbers and take a strong stance against what has happened in the past to ensure that we have a brighter future.
All right, Nikoli, before you wrap things up, let me just ask you your closing comments.
So I just want to say that with the pending local government elections, I'm calling on the population to be wise about your vote. Don't give away your vote for a jersey or for a lime or whatever it is. Think long and hard about where you're going to place your X, because the fact is that while the Progressive Party is not in the race, we do think that there are a number of properly suited candidates across the political spectrum who have offered themselves for political office. And we're really hoping that the population will give these individuals a chance. I'm not going to name them here because I want people to take the time to listen to the candidates and what they have to offer. We have a good crop, and I'm really encouraging the population to make a wise decision.
All right. Thank you so much, Nikoli.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much. All right, so that is the political leader of the Progressive Party, Mr. Nikoli Edwards, chatting there about his recent visit to Guyana. Of course, what we've seen is, and you would have seen earlier in this show, just a quick excerpt from his speech in Guyana, chatting there on the citizenship of state in Guyana. This is PSA TV. Coming up after this short break, we'll be chatting with political activist, or rather political analyst, Dr. Winford James. Stay with us.